here we are, everybody, right in the middle of February. Pitchers and catchers have already started to report at spring training. Baseball is right on the cusp of starting again, and the off-season is ending. Being that the off-season is kind of coming to a close, most of the team's decisions have already been made. Maybe some key signings will happen, scarcely, throughout the rest of the off-season, but as of now, I think it's pretty set in stone what every team is going to look like. You know, you always follow your favorite team's off-season, but you always really wonder, how did every team's off-season look like in perspective to everybody else's? How did they improve on their team? Where does each team rank, compared to other teams? Well, luckily for all of you, I spent the last week going over every single team's off-season and compiling them in a list from best to worst. That's right, today we're going to be ranking every team's 2020 off-season in the MLB from 1st to 30th, from best to last. Now, some guidelines to go over before we start this. First of all, this is the rosters, or the off-season moves as of, I believe, February 12th was the last time I kind of looked it updated. Therefore, because, moves are happening every single day, it's possible I missed one or two moves. Let me know if I did in the comments below. I also tried to limit the list to only major signings. So for example, if someone offered a minor league contract to a prospect we had never heard before, I'm not going to mention it, but let's say that it's, someone offered a contract to, the Rangers offered Greg Bird a minor league contract. That would be kind of a significant signing. For teams that didn't have that many off-season moves, I did include the minor league signings because they really didn't do anything else. So those were kind of the exceptions to that. That being said, let's hop right into the video. So stay tuned to see how your favorite team placed on my list. What in the fucking world are you guys doing? I mean, for real, when's the last time you made the playoffs? It was what, 2013, 2014, something like that? Not too long ago, but you were a wild card team at best. You had Andrew McCutchen when he was still a powerhouse. You had Starling Marte, Josh Harrison when they can still play baseball. But now what do you have? You have Jameson Taillon and Josh Bell, and some other prospects like Brian Reynolds that are, kind of coming around. But other than that, your team is so weak, devoid of superstars, despite those two names that I mentioned. Maybe Brian Reynolds gets better, maybe their other prospects gets better, but listen to this list of what they picked up. I mean, come on, guys, are you trying to do good? Are you trying to win games for your fans? They signed shortstop JT Riddle to a one-year deal. Who the fuck is that? They traded for starting pitcher Brendan Malone, never heard of him, signed outfielder Guillermo Heredia to a one-year deal, and signed catcher Luke Maile, or M-A-I-L-E, Maile, to a one-year deal. Who the fuck are these guys? These are your additions in the offseason? This is what you target? You have to spend some money. I understand the whole Moneyball small market team thing, but there's a difference between trying to build a team while spending little money and just not spending anything. And you're just not spending anything. I almost wanted to put the Orioles at 30th, but I feel like you almost expect them to do this bad at this point. It's not a shock when they do nothing to improve their team in the offseason except for sign a couple players to one-year deals that isn't going to improve the team overall. The Orioles signed shortstop Jose Iglesias to a one-year deal, starting pitcher Cole Stewart to a one-year deal, and then they acquired two relievers, Brandon Bailey and Michael Rucker, that I've never heard of via the Rule 5 draft. And they failed to dump the contract of Chris Davis, which is sucking away the soul of the team at this point, unless he can finally turn it around, which I don't see happening. This team strives for mediocrity ever since they lost Buck Showalter and Manny Machado, and Ubaldo Jimenez blew their playoff hopes a couple of years ago. This team refuses to make significant additions to their roster in the offseason. The only reason that they, I think, ranked ahead of Pittsburgh is because of Jose Iglesias, and I've actually heard of Cole Stewart. So Jose Iglesias is like a veteran that can maybe provide like 1% stability in a team that has almost no stability. Their stability is Trey Mancini. That's your stability. Your only good player is Trey Mancini. Because you got rid of VR. He was your other, like, I guess, superstar. He's not even a superstar, though. Like, if your superstar of your team is Jonathan VR, you need to go back to the fucking drawing board, guys. God damn. To be honest, I knew the Astros were going to go into the bottom 5, but I didn't really know where exactly to place them because while they've had a bad offseason, I feel like it's mainly because of the restrictions that they've had because of the cheating scandal. You know what I mean? Like, the punishments are probably what led to this offseason, but they brought that on themselves. So here they are at number 28. They lost both their manager and their general manager. I mentioned it for the Astros because, well, they basically made no new additions to their team. So when you lose that many key pieces that, you know, supposedly brought your team to the World Series, like your manager who was like, AJ Hinch was the big honcho, he was getting 100 wins a year, and then the general manager who put the team together, that's huge. And then if we get to the players, they traded for pitcher Blake Taylor for the Mets, had to give up Marisnick to get a nobody reliever. Then they traded for reliever Austin Pruitt. Okay. Then they signed catcher Dustin Garneau. That's it. That's their offseason. That's it. That's all they did. And then they did re-sign like all their key additions. They kept their core, but they kept a bunch of cheaters. You know what I mean? Like, these players are good, but you need to be making new, like, for example, even after they won the World Series, they still went out and got Garrett Cole. They still made some, you know, they got Robinson Chirinos, got added to the team, and then Martin Maldonado, I think at one point got added. You still have to add to your team even after you've been good. And I think they just weren't able to do that, which is their own fault, which is why they come at 28. I don't really know what to say about this team. They lost their core a few years ago in Eric Hosmer, Alcides Escobar, Mike Moustakas, Lorenzo Cain. I think Alcides Escobar, I don't even know what's going on with Alcides anymore, but the Hosmer, Cain, and Moustakas are gone, and they have not been replaced. And their best player is Whit Merrifield, basically. Their additions were a little bit better than the team's previous, but still weren't good. They traded for reliever Chance Adams from the Yankees, who, okay, not a bad move, but not a great one either. They signed third baseman Maikel Franco, who has been mediocre his entire career. They signed relievers Jesse Hahn, Greg Holland, and Trevor Rosenthal. Hahn was a one-year deal. Holland and Rosenthal were minor league contracts. You know, I mean, Rosenthal and Holland, I feel like if you get lucky, they do decent at this point in their careers. And you really didn't do anything to bring in any superstars. Granted, you got Perez, Merrifield, Jorge Soler now, but you need more. You know, if you really want to compete at the big league level, you need to start bringing in big contracts again. Spend some fucking money, for Christ's sakes. This team refuses to spend any money on their players. They refuse to get any big contracts. So what they go out and do this offseason is they trade for outfielder Tony Kemp, which is like, and then they get reliever Jake Diekman on a 2-year deal, which is probably the best deal we've seen so far. And then they trade for catcher Austin Allen. They let Blake Trianon walk away, which is bad. And then they trade for shortstop Vimiel Machin. You know, you made additions, but none of them were really meaningful except for the Diekman deal. And, you know, your team has actually not been bad the past few years, but if you want to get over that hurdle and really make a deep playoff run, you have to spend money. You have to spend some amount of money. You can't spend fuck all and expect to make a deep playoff run because the players you have, yeah, they're a good regular season team, but when it comes down to the postseason, they're not experienced enough. They're not as when it comes to just like fundamentals, they're not as in tune as like some of the other superstars in the game. They're not a good fit for the playoffs. You have to make a team that has a balance of like, okay, we did small marketing, but we also brought in superstars with postseason experience that can carry our team in clutch situations. You need to find that balance, Oakland, or you're fucked. With the Cardinals, I wanted to put them in the bottom 5, but then I realized this team made it to the NLCS. They have a solid core of players, but now they have minus Marcell Ozuna, who went to another team. I'll get to that later. But they have like a team that's playoff caliber already. So the reason they didn't get into the bottom 5 is because it made sense for them to kind of make less moves, but still, you guys still lost, Marcell Ozuna, and you still have to keep bringing on more talent. You can't just say, yeah, our team's good enough. No, you have to take that team and still make 1 or 2 more additions. That's what the Brewers are doing. That's what the Yankees have been doing year after year to get them to the World Series. So what's what the Astros were doing after they won the World Series. So you guys just can't accept the team you have. You still have to make moves. The moves they made were signing Matt Wieters to a 1-year deal, who fucking sucks at this point in his career. No offense, Matt. They traded for outfielder Austin Dean, who's really a nobody. And then they signed Kwang Hyun Kim to a 2-year deal, who is an international player. That's a risk. We don't know how he's going to do. And then they re-signed Adam Wainwright. They kept Adam Wainwright on a 1-year deal. That's it. That's their offseason. They needed to do more. They had to bring in some more like veteran talent for depth and to fill in the gaps where they might have let players go after this past season. What in God's name happened to this team? The thing is, when you get that close, you were in the World Series with the Cubs, right? You were right there, so close with that Rajai Davis home run. You could have had it. And it feels like every single season after that, they've been slowly losing what they had. That was great. They're losing their core. They lost Bauer. Now they lost Kluber. They lost Puig, Kipnis. Those are some of the losses, the major key losses in just this season. They still have people like, I think, Carlos Carrasco, Mike Clevenger, Lindor, I think, is still on the team. I don't think they've traded him yet. Jose Ramirez. But, it's getting farther from the point where you guys can compete for a World Series. You need to be making significant additions. And this is what you did this offseason. You signed Cesar Hernandez, a second baseman, to 1 year. Then you got Delino DeShields and Emmanuel Chase, a reliever, in a trade. And signed reliever James Hoyt and traded for catcher Sandy Leon. That's not enough. You guys need to make some major moves if you want to get back to the playoffs and the World Series. Because we're rooting for you out here. We want you to do good things. So start making more moves or you're going to end up at 24, right where I placed you. This team started off with a bang this past year. Everyone was shocked. People were like, oh my gosh, how are the Mariners doing this good? It turns out that was a fluke. It was like when the Mets started 12-1 and then their team crumbled apart. Same thing happened to Seattle. They lost their longtime ace, Felix Hernandez. He's now on another team. And this is what they did this offseason. They signed starting pitcher Taijuan Walker to a 1-year deal. He used to be on the Mariners, but he has not been fantastic. They extended this guy, Marco Gonzalez, to a 4-year extension. I'm mentioning it because, they don't really have that big of moves other than that. You're going to see exactly what I mean. They trade for Nestor Cortez from the Yankees. Actually not a bad move. He had some solid bullpen work, with openers, and he'd come and pitch 5 innings, be really good. Hopefully Nestor Cortez does something. They signed reliever Yoshihisa Hirano, 1-year deal. He's one of those guys where you never know if he comes to the U.S. to play in the MLB, he's going to do good. And then they get a bunch of, they extend this guy to 6 years, first baseman Evan White. I guess he's a prospect. Same thing with the White Sox and Luis Robert, which I'll get to later. I don't know if, Evan White's worth it. I don't know much about him. And then they sign starting pitcher Kendall Graveman and starting first baseman, not starting first baseman. They signed first baseman Patrick Wisdom to a 1-year deal. That's it. For a team that did what you did last season, and the only thing you really have that's still good is Daniel Vogelback, come on, guys. Enough of this mediocrity. Actually make some good moves. We want the real Mariners back, you know? The guys who are running 100 wins with Tino Martinez, Ken Griffey Jr., Edgar Martinez, like that team. Come on. They're not this low just because I'm a Yankee fan, okay? They did barely anything in this offseason. You know, like I said, I tried not to mention re-signing players unless it was like significant for that team or if it was a significant signing. Like with the Mariners, like extending Marco Gonzalez, that's because they really didn't do much. That was one of their big things in the offseason. But with the Red Sox, I should mention that they re-signed Benintendi, but even that's like, okay, he's a good outfielder, but you also, you lost Mookie Betts and David Price. David Price, actually good to lose him. He's getting older, and you don't want that contract tied to you, and Mookie Betts was asking for an ungodly amount of money. Yeah, he's good, but no player is worth $400 million unless you're Mike Trout. Let's be real. They trade for pitcher Austin Bryce. They signed starting pitcher Martin Perez, or Martin Perez, I'm not sure which one. They signed second baseman Jose Peraza, and they signed outfielder Cesar Puello, while also getting Alex Verdugo back when they lost Betts and Price. The only significant addition there is Verdugo, and even he's still young. So, Boston, come on, man. You were just in the World Series in 2018. You won it, and this is how you're keeping your team afloat. I'll say the same thing I said about the Cardinals. It's not enough to have a good team. You have to upkeep that team. You have to keep making additions. And right now, I feel like losing that big of a bat in your lineup, you better hope Verdugo pans out. This is a team, when you hear the additions that they made, you'd think would have placed lower on the list, but the thing is, this team already has a pretty good core, minus their starting pitching. I do feel like the starting pitching has to kind of, you know, get back to where it was, where they had, like, you know, they lost Arrieta, John Lester is coming out of his prime, if they even still have him. And, you know, now they have Darvish, Hendricks, Cole Hamels isn't on the team anymore, so definitely need to improve in the starting pitching department. But the additions they make, they signed reliever Jeremy Jeffress. Good move, I like Jeffress. They trade for Alfonso Rivas, a first baseman. They signed Jason Kipnis, minor league deal. No risk there. You know, maybe he does something for your ball club as a backup or as like a depth person. They signed catcher Josh Fegley, and they signed Steven Souza Jr., who hit 30 home runs for the Rays a few years back. Those are all good additions for support, you know. You have Bryant, Rizzo, Schwarber, Baez, Contreras. These are guys, that's your core. You just need to kind of supplement your core, but they didn't go after any big starting pitching other than, and relief pitching other than Jeffress. They needed to kind of do that, and for that reason, they're pretty low on the list. You know, the Rockies are a team where doing nothing almost made sense, and that's what they did, was really nothing. This is what they got. They extend a reliever, Scott Oberg, 3-year extension, you know, whatever. Figured I'd mention it, because again, they didn't really do anything significant. They signed starting pitcher Jose Mujica, 1-year deal. Okay. Not a big name, but whatever. Add some depth. And then they made a bunch of minor league deals. So, Ubaldo Jimenez, starting pitcher, reliever Tim Collins, shortstop Chris Owings, and second baseman Kelby Tomlinson. Those guys all add some depth. But when you have people like Arenado, Story, John Gray, Kyle Freeland, that you're all just waiting to break out, I guess it makes sense to do nothing. But then again, this is a team that, you know, has been underperforming for the past, 5 years. They always underperform. They're always right there at the cusp of actually making the deep playoff run, and they never do it. So you guys got to make really big additions to your team. You know, I understand kind of just maintaining a core around David Dahl, and, you know, like I said, Arenado, Story, and all those guys, but yeah, you guys got to step it up. You got to step it up, improve on the pitching, and hopefully you get there. I think I'm about as shocked as you that the Marlins made it this high on the list, because I expected them to suck for 4 years. You know, like, they're the team where, like, you just don't expect them to do anything. At this point right now, you know, when you get rid of Yelich, Realmuto, Stanton, Ozuna, all those guys, you don't expect them to ever do anything, but they did make some moves that were minor and might pan out, so we'll see. So they signed outfielder Corey Dickerson. This is their big signing of the offseason, which is kind of sad, and that's why they're so low. And why they didn't get up higher is because Corey Dickerson is a good outfielder, but if that's your superstar that you're bringing in, you need a lot more work. They signed, and I thought this is kind of a cool fact, they signed switch pitcher Pat Venditti, who has always kind of, you know, because he's a switch pitcher, has made like a bit of a buzz, but has never really made it on an MLB team. Maybe he makes it with the Marlins. They signed catcher Francisco Cervelli, who is probably going to be just depth in case someone gets hurt. They trade for starting pitcher Stephen Tarpley from the Yankees, and then they trade for second baseman Jonathan Villar from the Orioles, leaving the Orioles with absolutely fuck all, minus like Trey Mancini, their only player, basically. They then claim first baseman Jesus Aguilar from the Tampa Bay Rays. This is a guy who I drafted to be my starting first baseman in fantasy and completely shit the fucking bed. Jesus, you better do good with the Marlins, I swear to God. Then they signed a few outfielders in Matt Kemp, who I personally think still has some in the gas. Some gas in his tank, I think is the phrase. But, you know, maybe last year he wasn't able to do much. And outfielder Matt Joyce, which to, like, you know, a low-tier contract. Not a bad move. So they've made good moves, but I don't think they've made enough. Their team still has a lot of ways to go. And a lot of the guys they're bringing on are older. They're risks. So, that's why they couldn't place higher on the list. Another team that made some good moves, but again, still needs a lot of work. So I couldn't put them higher on the list. First thing is they signed outfielder Cameron Maybin. After Maybin had a pretty good run with the Yankees as a depth person, it looks like they're going to sign him to probably be a starting outfielder, which is a mistake. That is not how Cameron Maybin is supposed to be used. He's a depth person, a support role, and hopefully they don't misuse him. They also signed everybody's favorite mistake, Ivan Nova, to a one-year deal. This is a guy who with the Yankees had one successful year, and I think everybody kind of lost their minds, but ever since then, he's just been mediocre in the best way possible, because everyone keeps picking him up. You know, every team, the White Sox got him, the Pirates got him, now the Tigers got him. Every crappy team gets Ivan Nova, then needs a starter, and he always underperforms for them. So that's a mistake. They traded for catcher Eric Hayes. I've never heard of that guy, but it was one of their only trades that I could see that looks significant. They signed first baseman CJ Cron. There you go, one-year deal. And they signed second baseman Jonathan Schoop. I know, I like saying Schoop, though. One-year deal. Both good moves. Then they signed starting pitcher Zach Godley, who, that's a risk. You better hope he pans out, because that is a risk. He wasn't that great with the Diamondbacks the past couple seasons. And then my favorite addition is they signed catcher Austin Romine. That's right. Hopefully we get to see Austin Romine in the starting role as a catcher. I think he has the potential to be very good if he can be consistent with the bat, and he has been the past couple seasons with the Yankees. So good for you, Austin Romine. Even though you're on a crappy team, I hope you have a starting role. For the longest time, I had this team at 16 before the team that's now at 16 made a move that boosted them up a spot. But the Angels made a few good moves, is the best way to put it. They traded for starting pitcher Dylan Bundy and didn't really get much for it. Dylan Bundy is a pitcher where I feel like being on the Orioles organization, a team that doesn't know how to develop pitching, can have a very bright future on another team. I think the Angels hopefully might be able to guide him differently when Baltimore failed. Maybe he turns into a very good pitcher. You know, that's what I'm hoping. They also signed starting pitcher Julio Teheran, who's kind of struggled to be good in the past couple seasons. And, you know, I think he could get there with the Angels. Hopefully. We'll see. Maybe a new team, he turns it around. This is the big one. The big one. They sign third baseman Anthony Rendon, another power bat to add alongside Justin Upton and Mike Trout. They also signed catcher Jason Castro, and they trade for Garrett Williams, who's a pitcher. But they also have to get rid of Cole Calhoun, which, you know, is understandable. He's getting old. He hasn't been consistent in his time with the Angels. So, you know, that I feel like is a good mid-tier offseason. But, again, this is a team that should have made one or two more moves to get them, you know, another step further. I feel like we don't want to waste Mike Trout, guys. You know, we need you to make significant offensive additions other than, you know, Anthony Rendon. That's one good one. And you hope Justin Upton plays a full successful year and Trout, you know, doesn't get hurt. Then with Anthony Rendon, you know, this team could be good with a few more people. They need a few more people to get there. This team went so quiet for so long that looking at the list that they have, they should probably be up higher, but in light of comparing them to other teams, they barely did anything. I feel like they lost more than they gained in the long run, even though they kept Max Muncy, they kept Cody Bellinger. And now with these additions, you know, I decided to move them up a spot. They signed starting pitcher Alex Wood to a one-year deal, which is, you know, only $4 million. Good pitcher. I think he unfortunately didn't have a good stint with the Reds. Maybe being back in Los Angeles, he brings his career back to where it was when he was with the Dodgers last time. They signed reliever Jimmy Nelson to a one-year deal and reliever Blake Trianon to a one-year deal. Both are good relievers. And then the big one, the one that moved them up in the list, and this is why I put them as high as 16 and not lower, they traded for Mookie Betts and David Price, which is a huge addition to the team. Two veteran presences that have won World Series, have postseason experience. Both are very good. Good moves. Hopefully David Price doesn't implode with the Dodgers. He's old. He's got a lot of innings on his arm. You better hope he actually does some good there, guys. Hey everyone, thank you for watching part 1 of my off-season rankings video for the 2020 off-season. I tried to be as fair and as consistent as possible in these rankings. It was very hard, but still. But thank you for watching. If you want to check out the next part, which is part 2, where I'll be covering teams ranked 15 all the way up to number 1, stay tuned for my next video. And if you want to see my last video, where I discuss the Tom Brady contract with the Buccaneers and what that means for the Patriots and everything, click somewhere on the screen where that will be shown. And as always, thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace out.